you guys. So starting with the first story, this has been making the rounds all over the internet. And the headline reads, "This is really, really bad. Lapsus gang claims Okta hack." And Lapsus was found leaking Microsoft source code, but then breaching Okta could be much more. I know there's like at least more, like there's thousands of people who were affected by this breach. So what do you guys have to say about this?
So we've been in Lapsus Telegram channel, which is the only way they disclose these things is on Telegram. We've been there for months, and it's been going from like interesting, right? Because they were one of the few ransomware gangs disclosing on Telegram, to like a serious concern that everyone is watching, right? I don't know if it's the most popular Telegram channel, but I bet a lot of security professionals are all of a sudden adding themselves. Obviously, Okta, if you're in charge of authentication being breached, that's a major issue. And it's probably causing the same level of concern as like Log4j did near the end of last year.
I think this whole thing is changing. Like every day there's something new. Okta put out a statement that Okta had a Zoom call with security professionals. Now apparently the gang threw one of its members under the bus and turned him over to law enforcement. Just a crazy story all around.
Yeah, I think I can tell you from having conversations with folks in the industry that there's a lot of belief that you can automate people out of the process. And we've spoken about that a lot. And Okta is one of the names that comes up when people talk about doing exactly that. And you can't take away the reliance on other people to do their job or to do their part. You can only shift it and or concentrate it, as much as you want, or distribute it as much as you want. And so I'm not saying that they weren't a safe bet. They were an industry vendor for some of the top programs in the country. Almost everybody's using them, and rightly so. But you expect a little bit better on the disclosure side. And certainly nobody's immune. Nobody's immune, even if you think that some vendor is going to magically save you from other breaches exactly of that sort. They themselves are going to be victims of exactly the same thing.
Yeah, there's Okta is throughout the whole history here of security, there's been times where companies tried to roll up their security to one or two companies. And we saw that with Secure ID back in the day. And now we have Auth0 and Okta, who are trying to be the big names in single sign-on. And with Okta being potentially breached, it's pretty serious.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it makes it a little bit less abstract. So people think of security and then they think of, well, what can I do? And then they hear about a company like Okta, the leader, the highest market cap, everything else, and they get breached too.
Yep. Yeah.
I think that if you take a look at Okta, like I like Okta, they seem like a good company, but I never trusted the model of like, I have a very serious problem and it's called authentication and authorization and account takeover. And I'm just going to give it to you and inherently trust that you're going to handle it better than me. That may be the case, but it doesn't remove the problem. And with Okta being breached, everyone that's done that, right, they're sleeping soundly. They now have to realize that, oh no, like authentication is still a problem. And maybe like we don't have a silver bullet here where we just outsource it to Okta. Instead, maybe we do have to do the groundwork of educating employees, setting up good passwords, good password management, good policies. Like security is hard, and just SSO for somebody else is easy. And I think we're seeing the problem with that.
And then, you probably already know how I feel about it, but I don't know if somebody wants to comment on the disclosure chain here from their, Okta's initial comments to where we find ourselves today. Because if you're doing what Steve's talking about and you're distributing, or you are the party to whom that risk is being distributed. When you know there's an issue, I think that you have a responsibility around disclosure that's slightly higher than some other services.
I mean, it should be automated, right? Like, we're not there, we're nowhere close to there, but if I am trusting you with authentication, you should be like automatically pushing to me any issue with that.
That's very important points for both of you, because I did work in a company that did say, we're going to outsource everything to Okta and not pay attention. Now, if you watched the Zoom call and the statements from Okta this past week, they are very different. We know that the attackers had access to Okta system for 6 days. We know that they had access to their Slack. They got AWS keys to somewhere, got access to Jira, and to their Splunk systems here. And still, the Okta official statement says we have not been breached.
Really
How do you get away with that as a CEO? That guy like comes across as like the most non-credible guy ever.
Yeah, and
So-
people and security professionals were on the Zoom call saying the guy, there have been a lot of tweets about that Zoom call, and I'm not going to say that Okta doesn't have a problem, but I'm not going to say Okta doesn't have a problem.
So that's the difference between security and legal, because legal is the one that discloses breaches, and legal is the one that always says, if you read any data breach disclosure, it's basically, we may have had a security incident where people may have found out information about us, and it may have included certain types of information, including but not limited to, right? Like they have every caveat that could be possible. And so they build it to not share information. The whole point of legal with a breach is don't say anything that could open you up to additional liability. But that's the exact opposite of security. So you have two warring factions. One is, do we want to limit our after the fact liability? And two, do we want to do right by our customers and actually inform them as to how they can protect themselves?
But
And they choose the first.
But even just hearing him repeat, a mockery of that statement, all I can hear in my head is, we'll call that a half hour.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, legal's making great money from it. Look,
Yeah.
if anyone wins from a data breach, it's hackers and legal, right? So legal is making sure that the company, the liability is limited, but legal is very much not interested in security. That's not something that they care about.